Hey, what's up? Dusk the Viking here. So I just recorded going over the patch notes and I read through all the patch notes and it was like a 40-minute video because there's so much to read here. So I think instead I'll just put a link in the description below, or you can go to the Company of Heroes 3 Discord. They've got a link up there. I'm not going to read through all of the patch notes because I don't want to make a 40-minute long video. Instead, we're just going to talk about some of the highlights. So basically, they've done some things where they've retweaked mortars to where the mortars fire much slower, but to make sure that they can still do damage to emplacements, they doubled the damage. So mortars now have half the DPS they used to have against troops if you're just right-clicking. So this is to encourage you to use the barrage special ability more. And it seems like things like that are the direction that they're going to go. Some buffs here. Smoke got tweaked. Heavy machine guns had their suppression area increased across the board. This won't affect Wehrmacht that much because they already had such a wide area, but this will help the US machine gun, and some of the machine guns had smaller arcs a little bit. U.S. forces got a ton of much-needed buffs, as summed up here, helped to address their weak mid-game. And so we see a lot of buffs, but the big one that really stuck out to me was the bazooka team, which needed a lot of love, in my opinion. And they go from 300 to 250 and had the health pool increased per model from 80 to 90. Absolutely great change. Love this buff here. You know, more stuff for the mortars. The sniper, U.S. sniper got an increase. Some other things, tweaks to try and help, shore up the armored cars, make some things faster. And then they put in, a nerf here and there on some things to keep certain buffs from being a little bit too much. But yeah, overall, just a lot of buffs here. And then with like the Sherman whiz bang, and you're going to see this in a lot of the artillery, they've taken the patterns, they've basically just tightened them up and then also increased the area of effect blast damage. So artillery is now a little bit more powerful. And I think this is to help counter death balling and blobbing, because we've seen blobbing be a little bit too effective, I think, and there aren't enough strong counters to it. Like one or two machine guns does not stop a death ball. A death ball just rolls over those things, right? So artillery, this is a really good answer to that. So yeah, that's really good change here as well. And now we see some tweaks to the U.S. Airborne battle group, which for the most part, again, just buffs and a few little nerfs here, but overall pretty good. All right, so on to the British, and here's the big one. The big one. The boys' anti-tank rifles have been heavily nerfed because they were way overperforming. They were destroying vehicles, they were destroying infantry. You could use them in close quarters as an assault team, and they would destroy other assault teams. Just absolutely crazy. So the AoE damage from the rifle removed. Good. This was dumb. This allowed them to be a close quarters assault anti-infantry destroying mob. Like, this was dumb. No longer gain accuracy against weapon teams. Now, I understand why this was in here, because the boys' anti-tank rifle is a 50 caliber sniper rifle, right? Granted, it's a really archaic, clunky 50 cal, but that's what it is. However, the actual boys' rifle required you to deploy and set this thing up on a bipod, because if you were standing up when you fired it, you pretty much only got to fire at once, and then you were down a soldier who was probably recovering from a really jacked up body. So yeah, the fact that in Company of Heroes, because it's a video game and you do have to streamline some things, they run around and just fire it like a normal rifle, right? So you need to curb some parts of it to help keep it balanced. And this is one of the things where like video game balance kind of trumps reality, right? So yeah. And then you have like the damage against cover objects reduced, which is good because, again, they were overperforming against infantry when this is supposed to be an anti-tank, anti-armor unit. Damage against buildings cut in half. And then the long-range accuracy increased, though. Again, to actually help them do what they're supposed to do, kill vehicles. not infantry. So much, much needed. Now, of course, all the British players were basically just deathballing boys units, and that's it. Part of that is because this unit was egregiously overpowered. The other thing was because a lot of the other options were underperforming. So British players have a ton of buffs across the board, including like the British artillery, the Bishop, now getting the recharge time from 60 to 30. And yeah, this is just going to be firing twice as much now. And this is something that you're seeing a lot of, it are this like artillery pieces getting buffs. And again, I think it's to help like punish like blobbing, right? Break that up and give people better options to punish that. Also, the Stuart rushes are going to come back, which good, because that's kind of the only thing the Stuart was good for. This is not a late game tank or even a mid game tank. It's something you rush. It's a build order. So like that's kind of back. And then lots of buffs and nerfs, and there you go. So British players did lose a huge source of power. But this was all good. Like this is a much healthier, better performing British army now. Now we've got Wehrmacht. They got, again, to help counter blobbing, Neville Werfers got buffed. Concrete bunkers got nerfed though, and really hard, and that kind of surprised me. I didn't see that coming. Panzer Company manpower, they're trying to delay the German late game because they felt like it was too strong, which honestly, like the Panzer IV stat line was really similar to the Sherman stat line. I think the Sherman stat line was actually even a tiny bit better. So I really didn't like see this whole like Panzer IV dominating like late game, especially when you consider how weak Grenadiers are and the Wehrmacht early game, but apparently it was overpowering, so, they do what they need to do. I think I'm okay with them delaying it a little bit, although with the nerf to bunkers, that is going to make it harder to buy time, but with the nerfs to British and how US was underperforming anyway, this is probably okay. The more I think about it, probably okay. And a few other things here. Wirbelwind got taken down a notch, but that's because anti-air is so good in COH3. It doesn't also need to be an infantry-destroying monster. It still will be, but not quite as much. Another nerf to the Panzer IV tank. But here is a big one. The Luftwaffe battle group got the massive nerf hammer, and let's be real, it was a brain-dead battle group that took exactly 0 skill to play. You start the match, you click Luftwaffe, you click Fallschirm Pioneer, you don't build your first building, and then you drop them into the Fog of War wherever you want and instantly build an emplacement and then dominate that part of the map with exactly 0 effort, thought, strategy, or anything, and then you spam Fallschirm Pioneer, and then you just build more emplacements. Anybody could just dominate without even trying. So this got major nerfs. You now have to build a tier 2, 3, or tier 4 building before you can build the emplacements, which it absolutely needed. And now the emplacement also cost more to put down. Huge nerfs, but absolutely needed it. Luftwaffe Battle Group was just a really overpowered cheese rush comp, and yeah, so I'm super okay with that nerf. The 88 flak emplacement got a nerf. This makes me sad because this thing is so hard to build. Most maps, you don't even get to have this because you literally can't place it anywhere. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel here because they made mention earlier somewhere about how we will be making further changes to emplacements in the next hotfix. So maybe they're going to make emplacements crush the area around them so that you can build them. If there's a wooden fence, you can actually still build your emplacement there. Because let's be real, they're already digging into the earth. They're going to just smash the wooden fence, right? This means you can actually build emplacements around the map, and this means you'll actually have access to the 88 flak. So fingers crossed, that's what we've got coming. And if so, then this nerf makes sense because you're going to be able to put the 88 down in a lot more places. And then, more command points here. Just general nerfs to Luftwaffe, which definitely needed it. And then DAC, which has been apparently overperforming across the board, steamrolling competition, and overtuned everywhere. So cost increase, lethality, nerfs to damage, just nerfs across the board, except walking Stuka buffs, because again, giving better tools to help with deathballing, which DAC will need now that literally everything has been nerfed, except for Assault Grenadiers, which had their lethality increased, which we've seen this in the other factions. I skipped over it, but Assault units, I think, were probably underperforming, and now at short range, we're seeing lethality go up across the board, which is good because I do think assault squads were underperforming, especially the British Commando. Those got big buffs, by the way. So, yeah. This all looks pretty good. The Italian Combined Arms Battle Group, though, did get some buffs. And this is really good because I think this battle group was just not being used. So maybe we'll see it used now that they get a little bit more variety for DAC and some bug fixes. So overall, my take on the patch is that it is a really, really good patch and all the changes make sense. I'm a little sad at some of the nerfs, like the nerfed bunkers. But yeah, it was probably necessary, and especially with other factions getting nerfs and buffs or weaknesses that they already had, when considering like US, for example, it's probably fine, I think. Probably fine. So overall, really happy with it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say on that. Thanks for watching.